When I married Daniel 2 years ago, I thought I was gaining a family. Instead, I discovered what it felt like to be constantly under siege. The Hendersons were old money, fourth-generation pharmaceutical wealth with a sprawling estate and social connections that opened doors across the state. Daniel's mother, Margaret, made it clear from our first meeting that I wasn't what she'd envisioned for her eldest son. "She's very common, isn't she?" I overheard her tell Daniel's father after our engagement dinner. "What does she do again? Some kind of laboratory work?" "Research," Daniel corrected quietly. "She's a research scientist." "How nice," Margaret replied in a tone that suggested it was anything but. What they didn't know was that my laboratory work was slightly more significant than they assumed. I was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, lead geneticist for the National Institutes of Health, specializing in rare genetic disorders. My research had been published in journals they'd never heard of, and I held patents worth millions of dollars. But to the Henderson family, I was just the woman who'd somehow convinced their golden boy to settle for less than he deserved. When we announced my pregnancy 6 months into our marriage, the whispers started immediately. "That was fast," Daniel's sister Claire commented during Sunday dinner. "Almost like it was planned." "These things happen," Margaret said with a tight smile. "Though the timing is interesting." Daniel's hand found mine under the table. "We're excited," he said firmly. "The timing is perfect for us." But I could see the doubt in his family's eyes. They thought I'd gotten pregnant to secure my place in their dynasty, to trap their precious son with a baby he never really wanted. The comments became more pointed as my pregnancy progressed. "I hope the baby looks like Daniel," Margaret said during one visit, studying my face like she was cataloging features. "You never know with mixed marriages." "Mixed marriages?" I asked. "Well, you're Hispanic, aren't you? These genetic combinations can be unpredictable." I bit my tongue, but Daniel squeezed my hand harder. Claire was more direct. "It's just funny how quickly things moved," she said while we were choosing baby registry items. "From engagement to pregnancy in what, 8 months? That's some serious planning. Or some serious love?" I replied evenly. "Right, love." Her smile was sharp as glass. The worst came from Daniel's father, Richard, during a family barbecue when I was 7 months along. "You know," he said quietly while Daniel was getting drinks, "we've always been careful about the family bloodline. The Henderson name means something in this state." "I'm aware. I'm sure you are. I'm also sure you understand why we might want to verify certain things. For the family records." The implication hit me like a physical blow. "Are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm simply saying that in families of our standing, paternity confirmation is standard practice." I stared at this man who was questioning whether his own son was the father of my child, and something cold and sharp crystallized in my chest. "Of course," I said quietly. "I completely understand the need for verification." Richard looked surprised by my calm agreement. Good. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this." That night, I made a phone call that would change everything. 2 weeks later, we gathered for the gender reveal party. Margaret had insisted on hosting it at their estate, turning it into another social event where she could display her family's wealth and status. The main parlor was decorated in elegant neutrals, yellow and green balloons, tasteful flower arrangements, crystal champagne flutes for the adults. About 30 people milled around, mostly Daniel's extended family in their social circle. I stood next to Daniel, his arm around my waist, as Margaret called for everyone's attention. "Before we reveal whether we're having a grandson or granddaughter," she announced with a bright smile, "I thought it might be nice to have Dr. Peterson here to share the latest ultrasound results." Dr. Peterson, their family physician for 20 years, stepped forward with an envelope. But before he could speak, Margaret continued. "Of course, we're all so excited to welcome another Henderson into the family," she said, her eyes meeting mine with unmistakable meaning. "Assuming everything is as it should be." The room grew quiet. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Claire smirked from across the room. "Mother's just being thorough," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You know how important bloodlines are to old families." I felt Daniel tense beside me. "What are you talking about?" Richard stepped forward. "Son, in families like ours, it's standard to verify." "Verify what?" Daniel's voice was getting louder. Paternity, Margaret said simply. We had Dr. Peterson run some additional tests during Elena's last appointment, just to confirm what we all know to be true. The room was dead silent now. I could feel every eye on me, waiting to see how I'd react to this public humiliation. Actually, I said calmly, there's been a slight change of plans. I walked to the front door and opened it. 3 people entered. Dr. Sarah Kim from the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Michael Torres from Johns Hopkins Genetic Research Center, and Dr. Patricia Liu from the Centers for Disease Control. Everyone, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room. I'd like you to meet some colleagues of mine. Margaret's face went pale. Elena, what is this? Dr. Kim stepped forward. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Sarah Kim, Director of Genetic Research at the National Institutes of Health. I'm here because Dr. Rodriguez, Elena, requested that I personally deliver some test results. Dr. Rodriguez? Richard's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, Dr. Torres said, opening his briefcase. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, one of the world's leading geneticists and the recipient of this year's Nobel Prize nomination for her groundbreaking work in genetic disease prevention. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Daniel turned to stare at me, his mouth open. But more importantly, Dr. Liu continued, we're here to discuss the results of the comprehensive genetic screening Dr. Rodriguez requested for her pregnancy. She pulled out a thick folder. The tests were far more extensive than the simple paternity verification your family physician suggested. Dr. Rodriguez requested a full genetic analysis of both parents and the developing fetus. Margaret found her voice. Both parents? That's right, I said quietly. I had my own DNA tested, Daniel's DNA tested, and the baby's DNA tested through advanced prenatal screening. Dr. Kim opened the folder. The results are quite remarkable. Not only is paternity confirmed, Daniel Henderson is definitely the father, but the genetic combination of these 2 parents has produced something extraordinary. What do you mean? Daniel asked, his voice barely audible. Dr. Torres smiled. Your child carries a genetic mutation that Dr. Rodriguez has been studying for years. It's a beneficial mutation that provides natural immunity to several hereditary diseases that run in both your families. More than that, Dr. Liu added, this child's genetic profile suggests exceptional intelligence, enhanced immune system function, and resistance to the heart disease that has plagued the Henderson family for generations. The room was silent except for the sound of Margaret's champagne glass hitting the floor. But the most interesting discovery, Dr. Kim continued, was what we found in the Henderson family genetic history. Richard's face had gone ashen. What do you mean? Dr. Rodriguez requested a comprehensive family genetic analysis as part of her research. What we discovered is that the Henderson family carries several recessive genetic markers for serious hereditary diseases. She pulled out another document. Huntington's disease, early onset Alzheimer's, and a rare cardiac condition that typically manifests in the 4th decade of life. Daniel grabbed my arm. Elena, what does this mean? It means, I said gently, that our baby doesn't just carry your DNA. She carries the genetic keys to potentially curing the diseases that have been silently destroying your family for generations. Daniel's eyes widened. Dr. Torres smiled. Congratulations. You're having a daughter, and she's going to be extraordinary. Margaret's voice was shaky. How did you know to test for these things? I looked at this woman who had spent months questioning my motives, my worth, my very right to be part of their family. Because I'm not just a laboratory technician, I said quietly. I'm the leading expert on genetic disease prevention in North America. I've spent the last decade studying families exactly like yours. Wealthy families with hidden genetic time bombs who refuse to acknowledge their vulnerability because it might damage their perfect image. The room was spinning around Margaret. But you never asked. You were too busy assuming I was some gold digger who trapped your son with a pregnancy. I walked closer to her. What you didn't realize is that Daniel trapped me. What? Daniel looked confused. I turned to him with a smile. Darling, your genetic profile is exactly what I needed to complete my research. When we met at that medical conference and I realized who you were, I knew that combining our DNA could produce the breakthrough I've been working toward for years. The truth was more complex than that. I'd fallen genuinely in love with Daniel long before I understood the scientific implications of our relationship. But watching his family's shocked faces, I couldn't resist letting them think I'd been the one with a master plan all along. So you, Claire's voice trailed off, used your family's superior bloodline to advance medical science? I smiled. Guilty as charged. Dr. Kim stepped forward again. Actually, there's one more thing. Dr. Rodriguez's research, using data from this pregnancy, has led to a breakthrough in genetic therapy that could eliminate hereditary diseases in future generations. Which means, Dr. Torres added, that your granddaughter isn't just going to be healthy. She's going to be the key to ensuring all future Henderson children are healthy too. Richard sank into a chair. You're saying our bloodline, our family legacy, is about to become the foundation for eliminating genetic disease in wealthy families across the country. Dr. Liu finished. Dr. Rodriguez is already being courted by pharmaceutical companies offering hundreds of millions for her research. Margaret looked at me with new eyes. You're going to be rich? I shrugged. I already am. My patents are worth more than your family's estate. But now I'm going to be historically significant too. Daniel pulled me close. Elena, why didn't you tell me any of this? Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I could do for science. And because I looked around the room at his stunned family, I wanted to see how your family would treat someone they thought was beneath them. And he asked quietly. They failed the test spectacularly. Margaret stepped forward, her social training finally kicking in. Elena, Dr. Rodriguez, I owe you an enormous apology. We had no idea. You had no idea because you never bothered to find out. You saw a Hispanic woman with a science degree and assumed I was lucky to catch your son. I placed my hand on my belly. What you missed is that he was lucky to catch me. Dr. Kim began packing up her files. We'll leave you to process this information. Dr. Rodriguez, we'll expect your research proposal on Monday. Of course. And doctors, thank you for making the trip. I know this was unconventional. For a Nobel Prize nominee, we'd fly anywhere. After they left, the room remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Daniel spoke. So our daughter is going to change the world? Our daughter is going to save your family from destroying itself with genetic diseases they've been ignoring for generations. I corrected. And yes, probably change the world too. Claire found her voice first. We had no idea who you were. No, I agreed. You didn't. You saw what you expected to see and treated me accordingly. Richard stood up slowly. Dr. Rodriguez, what can we do to make this right? I looked around at these people who had spent months making me feel like an outsider, who had questioned my motives and my worthiness at every turn. You can start by treating people with respect regardless of what you think they can do for you, I said simply. And you can be better grandparents to your granddaughter than you were in-laws to me. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. We will. I promise we will. 6 months later, little Isabella Henderson Rodriguez was born healthy and beautiful. The genetic analysis proved correct. She carried immunities that could revolutionize medicine and eliminate the hereditary diseases that had plagued wealthy families for generations. My research, funded by a consortium of pharmaceutical companies, established the Henderson Rodriguez Institute for Genetic Disease Prevention. The initial funding was $500 million. Margaret and Richard did keep their promise. They became devoted grandparents who never again questioned whether Isabella belonged in their family. They also established a scholarship fund for young Hispanic women pursuing careers in science. As for Daniel, he still occasionally shakes his head in amazement. I can't believe I married a Nobel Prize nominee and didn't even know it. You didn't marry a Nobel Prize nominee, I remind him. You married a woman who loved you enough to let your family reveal exactly who they were before deciding whether they deserved to be part of our daughter's life. And they passed. Eventually. Sometimes the best revenge against people who underestimate you isn't proving them wrong. It's letting them discover that they needed you far more than you ever needed them. And sometimes the greatest trap isn't the one you set. It's the one people set for themselves with their own prejudices and assumptions.